Good afternoon. It's a Wednesday afternoon. It's Kevin Graham and John Hughes Jr. for a Celtic State of Mind bulletin here at 12:30. John, how are you today?
I'm fabulous, Kev. Fabulous. I've got a wee trip away at the weekend, going to Spain at the weekend. Looking forward to that. And I'm very, very grateful for once for global warming because apparently there's been a meltdown in Govan.
I think there's always I must admit, I did find it quite funny today. And I always think it's good to laugh at yourself at times, and I laugh at myself very, very often. But all these guys who make a living predicting Rangers' second downfall, like, they haven't released their accounts, they haven't done this. They're now scrambling about this morning after the Rangers have released accounts which show a profit. Aye, there's a lot of caveats to the reason that they got that profit, right enough. Yeah. But all these guys scurrying about trying to make it out it's the bad news that they've been predicting. I love these fellas, man. I mean, I take them as the type of guys that would actually, if you emailed them saying that you were an Egyptian prince, they would give you their bank details. I think that's their intelligence level. I don't know how they can actually be bothered spending so much time poring over somebody else's finances.
Yeah, well, it's not my thing, although I do take an interest, obviously, because that's sort of my field. But I'm just more interested in the meltdown on the park rather than the meltdown in the accounts. Anyway, so we'll put it this way: it put a nice wee happy glow on the weekend. It made that result ever more important.
What it did for me was. Look, there's quite a few E's on already. Please like and subscribe. Do the usual housekeeping. There's no plans for a fire drill, so you don't need to know where the fire exits are. You'll notice that I'm somewhere else today. You will notice that I'm not in my usual kitchen. The reason being, my dad was in hospital yesterday for a wee procedure, and I'm up here giving him some TLC. I didn't know what they sent for me for, to give him some TLC, but I'm here anyway. That's because there was nobody else, really. If I'm not truthful. I'm only saying that because I ken that he's watching through there. I know that he's watching because I can hear myself.
Hello, Mr. Graham. Hope you're feeling well, sir.
Yes, I can hear him. Now, we'll go to the comments first. Durban Coolshed. This is a day for the Axom hardliners, Yogi and Kevin Bampot Heed. Bully comes in, Bully Balloon Brain. That's a great name, Bully. On the scale of 1 to 10, how does Kevin Graham score on the Axom Bamo meter? Kaiser, I'm going to just read the first bit of this. Kev's a 10. Thank you very much. And Bully Balloon Brain comes in and says, I give Kev Graham Port a perfect 10 in the nicest possible way. Cheers, lads. If you want to just leave a comment what I'm on the Bamo meter, I love stuff like that. We've got. You were mentioning you were going to Spain there, John. We've got a wee Facebook user. Hiya, Kevin, John, tuning in from Mallorca. There you go, eh?
Well, I'm off to Malaga. So it's a friend of yours' 60th, and it's my birthday as well, actually, on the Monday. But I haven't done a short trip before, I have to say. Usually when I'm going, I stay away for a wee while. But, it's Friday to Monday. But I'll take it. I'll take anything I can get at the moment. I didn't get to Madrid, so Malaga I'll have to do.
If we go back to, we'll go to Madrid, then we'll go to Celtic Park on Saturday. Madrid, it kind of went the way that your worst nightmare was going to go. When we were sitting here on the Wednesday afternoon, it was like one of the options that we didn't really speak about, but we knew it was a possibility. Yeah. Again, we were like the second half performance. We're like a housewife that takes too many Valium and falls asleep in the second half. Yeah. And first half's fine, second half we weren't very good, but we won the last 19 minutes 1-0, which is something that we can actually build on.
Well, it was the one thing we said we wanted the opposite of that to happen. We reckoned if we had any chance at all, we need to score early and hang on for dear life. Although that was very unlikely, but that's what we reckoned we needed to do. And then, 4 minutes in, they get a penalty. And Joe Hart, honest to God, sometimes the man's just glued to his line. You know, you're screaming at the telly. You know, you could see that coming. The boy had like a 40-yard run-in. You're shouting at the goalie to come out and get it. And he's so much opportunity and he doesn't. And then, you know, shot goes against Jens. Fair enough, that's a penalty. Then the O'Reilly penalty, which was very unlucky. Again, you know, one of these VAR things. And, you know, getting used to that nonsense. So, no, it wasn't. It was the opposite of a great start. But then we had the opportunity to come back into it. You know, we got a penalty ourselves. And we had an opportunity to come back into it. I'd say if we get a pen at the moment, I wouldn't be banking on us to score it. I think the boys are lacking in a wee bit of confidence. That's a big arena to step up and take a penalty, to be fair to JJ, but you know, it wasn't a great effort at all.
JJ's had a cracking record, but see, everything we were firing, the chances that we had, they were all straight down the big goalie's throat. I can't actually remember what his name was. Courtois. That was right down his throat. And when I saw JJ lining up, I'm going, I think he's quite scared of that goalie standing in front of him. And because the goalie's reputation is like Japanese hogweed, man, it just spreads. You can't get past it. You can't get rid of it. And I think that kind of played in his mind. It was a poor penalty. I wouldn't even call it a decent save. It's a poor penalty. As soon as the keeper's going the right way for that, he's saving it. And it's very unlike Juranovic. It's very unlike Juranovic to like do something like that. But as you say, it just sort of like summed up like our European campaign this year. Missed chances, then we just fell apart in the second half.
Well, I mean, the falling apart is, I mean, I thought some of the subs did all right when they come on, but again, it's pretty much as we said before. I mean, in Europe inverts our game. So, you know, as we said before, when we're domestic, we've got 65% of the ball roughly, and we're pressing the rest of the time. And in Europe, that's flipped on its head. So we're pressing for far longer, far harder, far more intensity than we're capable of doing, and we don't have any practice at it domestically. And athletically, it's an incredibly big ask, you know, to be pressing at that intensity for that amount of time. So we're always going to drop away in the second half. There was never much doubt about that. I mean, the fact that we scored, you say, won the last 19 minutes, we did okay. But to be honest with you, I mean, there was a point there about 3-0. They were showboating.
Aye.
You know, they were passing for fun. They were just showboating. They weren't, you know, they weren't really attacking with any intensity. It was they were just enjoying themselves at that point because they knew it was a done deal. So, you know, how our performance relates to that, I don't really think it matters at that point. You know, it was great to see the goal, and mainly because you could see how much it meant to the player. But, you know, in terms of our performance, you know, the subs that come on did okay, but, you know, it didn't really matter. The game was gone, you know. So, yeah, as you say, I think more reflective of our European campaign, and we had quite a contentious one on this, you know, when we didn't win when we actually did go out officially after Shakhtar. There was a lot of unhappy people on the pod and in the comments. So, you know, we've done that. We've already been over there. It's very disappointing. Madrid, you were just going there to see how you could fare, and the answer is not well. The answer is there is a vast gulf between us and them, but that's no surprise. That's no surprise.
The answer is the reality that we didn't want to talk about last Wednesday was there for all of us to see, and you go, well, that is the reality, and you do think it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately, the way the modern game is, it is that way. But we have to look at a way of bridging that gap. Pat Dolan read my mind, John, because I was going to bring this up. Joe Hart is rotten at penalties. Reminds me so much of Craig Gordon. Pat, I used to say with Craig Gordon that the Celtic team used to just line up for the kick-off if we got a penalty kick against us because they knew that he was going to dive the wrong way. And I get the same kind of sense with Joe Hart, where with Fraser Forster, I was always confident the big fella was going to poo one out the bag.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I'm not enough of a goalkeeping expert to know, you know, he obviously doesn't have a great record at it, but I'm far more concerned about the reason there was a penalty against us in the first 4 minutes. And as I say, that it's the big games as well. It seems to be mainly the big games. He will not come. He will not come off his line. You know, I mean, he just won't come for the ball. And, you know, if there's bodies in front of him, he doesn't come. There's guys running down on him, he doesn't come. You know, and it's especially that first one. I mean, that's goalkeeping 101. You don't have to be an expert goalkeeper to see, you know, how many times have you trained for that situation? The guy's coming in, you've got to close him down. You've got to close the angle down. You've got to make it difficult for him. You don't just let him get a clear run in on you. So I don't blame Jens for that. But I mean, if I'm going to criticise Hart for something, it's that, you know, penalties. You know, again, you've only got a 50-50 shot at saving penalties if you're lucky. I don't actually know what the percentage is, to be fair, but it wouldn't be high. But you know, again, and if you want to worry about something at the moment, I'd be more worried about us. Our inability to take a penalty. But it's just a strange one, especially because see Giakoumakis. I mean, when we signed him, you know, the talk was, yeah, he scored a lot of goals, but, you know, 30% of them were penalties. So, you know, that detracts then from what his scoring record was when we signed him. But he was scoring penalties for fun before we signed him.
We're hoping Giakoumakis' penalty record is just atrocious against Livingston, because that's the two that he's missed. He's only missed 2 against Livingston. Numpty Days, 67. Give Joe Hart a break. No Hart last season, no title. Completely agree, Numpty. I actually do completely agree. And what we know, Joe Hart has his faults, and he's at the age now where John says that he's not commanded his box, but he's not going to command his box because he's never done that any time in his whole career. He has adapted to Ange Postecoglou's style, but there is still work there. And I think Postecoglou himself, we will talk about this later on, John, Postecoglou himself says at the AGM, well, there's some of your heroes I know that if we want to progress, we're going to need to move on. We'll talk about Saturday. We'll forget about Europe. That's that done for next year.
I'll just say one thing, Kev. See, the comment there is so typical of the comments we get. Because you criticise one aspect of a player's game does not mean you're calling them a bad player.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean you're not recognising their contribution. It just means there's one aspect of their play which you believe is flawed. That doesn't mean that Joe Hart's a bad player. So again, you know, I appreciate the comment, but I mean, it's very, very typical of the comments we get. You're just picking and choosing what you want to hear, and that's not what we said. So, you know, thanks, but no, that's not what we said.
Water off my back now. Well, Saturday. I says on Saturday when I left the ground that I says this was a very, very this was petering out to be a very uneventful 2-1 victory, a very unmemorable game. Hopefully on the way to another title, a very unmemorable game on the way to the World Cup break, and all of a sudden it became absolutely brilliant in the last 5 minutes. It was a game that you're actually going to remember. Then what happened on Sunday turned that 5 minutes into even more beautiful than what it was even on Saturday when I was walking out the stadium. That could be a big 5 minutes, because even though I don't think the league's over, you only have to look at last year to say that the league's not over. Even though it was brilliant walking at the stadium on Saturday, scoring 2 late goals, and you're going, I'm quite glad we turned up for those 5 minutes in the second half, because the second half was utter dross. And I'm quite glad that we actually just turned up and went, we need to go up a gear. But what happened on Sunday made those 5 minutes could be a pivotal moment, much like Tony Ralston at Ross County last season as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely huge, because the swing that gave us then at the weekend was massive, you know, because of the result that happened elsewhere, you know, and St Johnstone, I have to say, has always been my favourite saint. But you know, for that, thanks to that result, that win became far, far more important than it was, and it was already important. So it gave us a massive swing in our favour. It was huge and crucial, and it was absolutely brilliant. And as I'm sure we'll come on to discuss, but I don't know about you, Kev, but funny enough, you know, I tweeted this out, and I think nearly everyone agreed with that. When they equalised, despite the fact it was so late, I didn't feel panicked. I didn't feel that sort of fatalistic resignation and disappointment that you normally feel like, I was confident that we would get one. And not just because, of how we were playing, or not because we were playing spectacular, but because the combination of how we were playing or starting to play when especially when the subs come on, and the opposition. That opposition is poor, and I wasn't really. I didn't feel as if they were going to hold out, and plus, of course, the unlimited, extra time VAR gives you. So that was. I just wasn't overly concerned. I was confident we'd go on and get one. I didn't think we'd go on and get two, but hey, happy days.
It was happy days, and I was a bit like you, and maybe, and Danielle F. Leaves a comment. Danielle F. The last 5 minutes epitomises Celtic under Ange. The first goal to win the game was great, but the second was glorious. And I was a bit like you sitting in the stadium. I was going, 87 minutes, we've got plenty of time. That's what went through my head. I'm going, it's 87 minutes, we've got plenty of time. But what I will say, I like admitting that I do get things wrong. And I says to Jay that sits next to me, I says, your subs have been brutal since they've came on, and two of them ended up scoring. Saturday was like, I thought the second half was boring. I think we were uninspired in the second half. But it's the first time I've had a look at Postecoglou's substitutions and went, why did you take off Giakoumakis and why did you take off Haksabanovic? Because I think both of them were contributing to pinning Dundee United back. And when both of them went off, we sort of lost the game completely. The game was petering out to nothing until Dundee United had that wee 2-minute spell where they managed to score. And it's the first time I was sitting there questioning, that was a strange sub. You've took guys off there I thought were actually playing well. But then again, I'm not the one that's seen the stats sitting on the sidelines. I'm not the ones that are getting the real-time data through. It might be saying, by the way, Haksabanovic is done. You need to take him off, even though he's having a good game. Giakoumakis, you're going to need to. But sometimes, it was the first time I thought that sometimes these subs are just subs for subs' sake, rather than having a purpose.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think the thing that's been established was, we'd always thought that the subs were driven by the stats and the data that they're getting from the trackman that they wear, or whatever. But the fact that the subs are always at the same time belies that notion. Unless they've established that that's just when people drop off generally. But the fact that the subs are always on 65 minutes leads you to believe he's not necessarily looking at individual stats and going, that player needs to come off just now. Otherwise they'd be at different times in the game. He's obviously trying to influence the game, change direction in the game. And in this case, we weren't playing particularly well. The subs come on and didn't really particularly change that until the last 5 minutes. But there's an interesting one. This is the controversial one, Kev. That seemed to be, I didn't think it was controversial, when O'Reilly didn't get picked there for Denmark. Wasn't really expecting him to, but I just put out a wee tweet just to say, shame for the lad, and I hope, you'd have hoped that he could have got into the team. But obviously it was a bit of a long shot. But that sparked off a ruck in the comments where I didn't realise there were that many people who just don't rate O'Reilly at all. They just think he's absolute rubbish. So the argument I had, one fella was, he's done nothing this season, he's been invisible. And I said, well, what about the Red Bull game, where he was our best player offensively and defensively? And he said, but domestically. And I was like, well, what do you mean, like Saturday, when the Dundee United game, where he was directly involved in all 4 goals? You know what I mean? So he wins the ball in midfield for the first one to set Jota free. He plays the ball into the box for Gigi that knocks down Haksabanovic, scores. He takes the corner that Ralston flicks on and Kyogo scores. And then he plays an absolute worldie of a ball through for Abada. And thankfully, Maeda missed it. But, what a finish that was as well from Abada. So beautiful ball, beautiful finish. But I accept the fact that there's been some players that have looked disappointing this season, especially in the Champions League, because we are playing at, there's a level above us there. But against Shakhtar and stuff like that, we should have done better. We should have looked better. But I accept that some of the guys have looked a bit erratic and so on, and he's maybe not been playing his absolute peak. But someone said to me, "Oh well, the fact he hasn't scored is very telling." Is it? What's it telling you? Because he set up that goal. He set up 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them potentially. He was directly involved in all of them. But I'd be interested to know what people are saying in the comments, because essentially it seems to be that people are very, very conflicted about O'Reilly and how he's playing this year. So I'll just leave that for a while. Let people stew in the comments, and we'll come back
the comments that have came in so far, John, are extremely positive. If they were writing Matt O'Reilly a Valentine's card, it would be absolutely gushing. The underwater cabbage salesman, O'Reilly has been brilliant in recent weeks. I've got to concur with that. Ridiculizer comes in and says Matt O'Reilly is great. Daniel F comes back in again and says, work. We are playing out of his best position. Thought O'Reilly has been incredible. And I kind of agree with this with Munio. I like your avatar. That's quite interesting, that avatar. Matt O'Reilly gives Rogic vibes, but his final third finishing isn't great. Does a job in Scotland, but too inconsistent in Europe. I'm going to pick up something with that. I'm not ready to judge him on Europe yet, because he's only had, I think he's had 8 games. He played against Bodo last season as well, but I think he showed up well against the teams in the Champions League. I think a lot of the problem that people have with Matt O'Reilly is he doesn't seem busy. He doesn't charge about because he doesn't need to go and charge about. And he's got that natural ability where he makes it look a bit easy. He makes it look lackadaisical almost. And sometimes I think us as Scottish, Irish, I was going to call us British, but I won't bother. Scottish and Irish folk, I think sometimes we see guys grafting, and we put that above actual ability. Aye, he grafts, he's fantastic. Whereas O'Reilly grafts in a different way. It's not in a sweating way. It's actually in a playing football way. And I think some folks struggle, especially on the telly.
Yeah.
Sometimes on the telly, if you're watching the telly, it can be extremely difficult to see what the players are actually doing. But in real time, if I'm in the stadium watching Matt O'Reilly, you can actually see that the work that he does.
And well, there's a perfect example, though. I mean, you wouldn't have heard anyone mention. I mean, if I hadn't gone back and looked at it, I didn't even notice it myself on that first goal. It was O'Reilly that won the ball in the midfield. He won that back in the midfield and plays it through, and that's how Jota gets away. So, people, again, it can be difficult unless you're analysing a game or doing what we have to do sometimes, which is sit and take notes and watch it back and all the rest of it. First of all, there's confirmation bias. We're all familiar with that, which is if you're determined to think someone's garbage, all you're ever going to see is the bad bits of their play. So there is that. If people have taken against you, it's very difficult to change minds. But, he is, although I agree that he hasn't been brilliant in Europe, but none of them have, because they're playing miles, above a level. I mean, last year, it was only a year ago he was playing in Milton Keynes. So, well, then he's playing in Real Madrid. For God's sake, I mean, how much?
That was one of the comments last week by the commentator. It was exactly 12 months to the day that Matt O'Reilly scored his last goal for Milton Keynes Dons, and 12 months later he's in Madrid. Playing with Celtic. So, that's a meteoric rise, John. That is a meteoric rise.
Absolutely. And how much improvement do you expect from one guy in a year? Do you know what I mean? It took Tony Ralston 5 years.
Still improving.
I know, exactly. And Greg Taylor, look at him. A sensational rise that he's had. Now, Matt O'Reilly's had a meteoric rise. So, as you say, Kev, and you can say the same for Hatate. Again, these guys have gone in there this year. Now, look, we're disappointed in the European campaign, and we're disappointed especially the games against Shakhtar. Very disappointed in those. But again, these guys have never played at this level. They've never had that experience before. That the whole thing is new to them. I think. I was disappointed because I had expectations set myself that, we could do well in that group. But obviously, I wasn't right about that. And the players, you've got to, factor in the levels that they have to jump to get up against these teams. So, maybe we just sort of dismissed that a wee bit too handily and assumed that these guys could keep on improving just massively the way they have done for us domestically. But they obviously can't. There's limits to that. And again, this is going to be whether O'Reilly actually ever gets the opportunity to improve with us is another issue, because again, I'm sure we'll come on to that. But Ange's comments about the aggressive transfer strategy.
This is a brilliant segue, John. This is almost as if we've scripted this, which was one of the accusations that we got, that this was all scripted. I mean, how can anybody script the rubbish that I say? I do not understand that. We'll talk about Matt, and I'll bring in the comments. Every comment has been positive, John. So good. I didn't ken where these bums on Twitter, or we all move into whatever it's called. Is it Mogadon or whatever it's called now? Logging off Twitter. I can't remember. I don't know. It begins with an M. I don't know what it's called. I'm a 46-year-old guy who's staying with his dad for a couple of days. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm not doing with the kids. I'm not doing on the mind. That's it. Paddy Laverty about Matt O'Reilly. It's called Elegance. Kev, that's a very young-looking Paddy. If that's Paddy with George Best there. That's a very young-looking Paddy. It'll be good to see Paddy in January when he's across for the Axom night out. Mark E. O'Reilly would do well in an experienced team, but he's been thrown into the deep end of us, but he's still swimming. Completely agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah. Gary Oliver, I must be imagining Matt O'Reilly has been playing holding midfielder for a large portion of the season, not his role. He's taken one for the team at his own expense. He's a Rolls Royce. I think Paul Ban does calling players Rolls Royces, Gary. I think we have to come up with a different car. He's a Ferrari. I think we'll need to actually say there. Kaiser, yeah. I saw your comment earlier on, Kaiser, about coming on State of Mind. What I'll say is just email Paul, and I'm sure he'll be able to arrange to get your dulcet tones and forthright and great opinions on the programme. O'Reilly must be worth 24 million. Get him punted. He's too handsome. It hurts my eyes. That is a point as well. I mean, he is a good-looking lad. I think he would make a good Batman. Because he's got that kind of smouldering dark look. He's like, I do think he would make a great Batman. Dale, I think he has been brilliant, has taken to the Kalmak position with ease. He looks cool as F all the time. And Pat Dolan, O'Reilly's passing is excellent. I think it might be his language style that clouds fans' judgment. I think me and Pat are the same person today. He's been in my head quite a lot. So,
good point.
This was an early comment from Menino. I can read into Ange's comments about having to move players on and some fans won't like it. Now, this was a comment that Ange says at the AGM when he was asked about progress. And I took the comments basically mean as we've got our heroes just now, but every area of this team can be improved. And it seems like we've got two, as you says to me earlier on, John, aggressive transfer strategies in place. Now, he says yesterday at the press conference that our January window's almost done. He says everything's in place for the January window, and he's going to use the World Cup break to plan for the summer. Now, I think that means there is going to be a turnover in the team. There is going to be some guys who he's maybe going to take the money for and run. They probably know some guys who they'll know there is interest in certain players. Yeah. And so it seems like Postecoglou is already having plans to deal with this. Kaiser, Mourinho, he comes back and says, I think Kyogo might be leaving us soon. And Kaiser says the players that we could have a look at that may be on our way is CCV, Jota, Josip Juranovic, Hatate and O'Reilly. I'm going to pick 2 names out of that. I think CCV, folk are ignoring him. I think he's been utterly fantastic for us. And I think he will be quietly turning heads. And if I was a betting man and somebody asked me to put money on one of those 5 players leaving, it was 5 players, one of these 5 players leaving in January after the World Cup, is going to be Josip Juranovic. I think Juranovic, after the summer, where he was linked with a number of moves, he's got a World Cup coming up where he is the first choice right back for a half-decent nation. Footballing nation. I'm not talking about the people or anything like that, just in case anybody wants to dig me up about Croatia's past or anything like that. I'm talking about a half-decent football nation who go far in tournaments every time that they're in them. I think he's 27. I think he's 27. He's got one big move left, and I think his agent's going to push him out the door. And I don't think Celtic are going to be difficult to deal with either.
No. I don't think so. Again, first of all, how much do we care as long as there's decent backup? Ralston is more than capable backup. And for me, Juranovic this year, maybe things could have gone worse in Europe, but I don't think he covered himself in glory at all in Europe at that higher level. So for me, Big Tony is decent backup. I'd have him. So if Juranovic wants to go, that's grand. You'd be more concerned about if someone said to you, we're going to sell Greg Taylor. You'd be like, oh, wait a minute, because where's the backup there? Now, that's interesting when you say about CCV. Hadn't really thought about that because you think of him as just the core. He's really at the heart and the spine of the team. But if someone wants to pay stupid money for him, I mean, again, we've got Starfelt coming back now. You've got Jens there, who I don't think would be too much to buy. But, I mean, I just basically think there aren't going to be any sacred cows here, is what Ange is saying. There's going to be nobody that can't be got rid of, depending on what that means money-wise. Because at the end of the day, the majority of these guys we signed, nobody knew who they were last year, right? So it's not as if we're going for established names. So to be a proper player trading club, and this is where I love what he said, because to be a proper player trading club, you do have to be aggressive in the market. And so you have to be aggressively looking for guys, these, £1 million, £2 million guys, but who are, undervalued, significantly undervalued, or who we think we can coach to a much higher level. And, if you take Haksabanovic, for instance, we got him for £1.5 million. If someone wants to pay £8 million for him, which is probably worth, then, what do you do about that? It's not so much who we get rid of, it's who we bring in. Mm-hmm. So, as long as, you can get rid of whoever you like, but as long as you're bringing in better quality, that's the point.
Liam's point here, Liam with the Wu-Tang Clan avatar. Liam, who's your favourite member of the Wu-Tang? I'm a Method Man myself. I love Method Man. John's looking at me going, what the hell are you talking about, Kevin? I've got no clue. I think when you look at what we deem to be our first 16, I think Cameron Carter-Vickers is a drop-off when Cameron Carter-Vickers isn't there. And I agree with Liam what he actually says. The only guy we cannot sell by any means is Cameron Carter-Vickers. Any other names that Kaiser mentioned, I think we could lose and still be able to handle it. What I would say is I don't think people will look at Hatate or O'Reilly or Jota at this precise moment in time until they have another year at Celtic, another year at Europe. But somebody, I can't remember, somebody in the comments says the English had a look at CCV, he's had 6 loans. Aye, but he's progressed in the last 2 years, and there will be clubs in England that will take a punt on him because he's already been in the English system, and he will count as a development player, I think, as well. And also think that Josip Juranovic, because of his international pedigree, will be another one that they'll be interested in. I'm not too worried about the other ones, because the other ones would actually, whoever bought the other ones, for me, it would be a significant gamble for the buying club to pay the type of money that we would be looking for those players at that stage in development.
Yeah, I mean, there is no point in us selling guys that we bought for 3 or 4 million for 5 million, unless they're at the end of their career and we're looking to get shot of them. That doesn't really help us, So, but the point is, again, what Ange is getting at here, if you have bought these guys, for really, great value, so the 1.5 millions and the 2 millions, the Hitatis and stuff like that. If someone's offering you 10, 12, 15 million, you've got to look at that. You have to look at that, because you could be bringing in, a seriously quality player for that sort of money. Now, the caveat to all of that is player trading club means we need to be making a profit as well. So obviously we're not just piling all this money straight back in to the players. So we need to be making a profit as well. So that's where, as I say, that's where the caveat lies. And again, it's not an easy model to get right. But so far, Ange has done what seems to be an excellent job, and we're on the right path. And it's great to hear him talk like that, because it means someone's in control of it. We're not just vaguely sitting about into transfer windows wondering what Peter Lawwell's going to allow to happen. There seems to be an aggressive approach to this. Peter Lawwell's in there now as well, and appears to be significantly better at it than his dad. But it's great to see, because we've been talking for ages, and as you said before, Kev, if you want to be taken seriously, as a club, you need to act seriously. You need to put your big boy's pants on, as you said, Kev. I'm going to steal your quote there. If you're going to be in the big boy, if you want to be treated like a big boy, you need to wear the big boy pants. So you need to have the structures in place. You need to have the right people in place. You need to have everyone pulling in the same direction as to what that model is. So we've agreed on what the model is. We've agreed that with a player trading model, but we weren't run like a player trading club previously. We weren't run that way. We said this is a model, but then we didn't do it. Mm-hmm. So and again, it looks now as if things have taken what appears to be quite a dramatic shift. So I'm absolutely delighted by that. And yes, I imagine there's going to be some sore ones when we lose guys. You're just going, for God's sake, how are we supposed to progress if we're losing our best players? But the point is, you've got to be bringing guys in. So the boy starts at 2 million. We've had this discussion a load of times. You buy someone for 2 million, you sell them for 15 million. You cannot replace that guy with a £2 million player.
No, this is Marquis' comment here in a nutshell. You cannot sell Edouard and replace him with a Patrick Kamala.
Yeah.
That is the level that you're actually talking about. Marquis, for those listening audio later on, the club's history of progress usually means selling off our best players and replacing them with projects.
So resetting to zero, you can't keep resetting to zero.
If you're losing Josip Juranovic, you've got to be bringing in a better player than Josip Juranovic. You've got to use the market better. And this is something that I don't think that we've actually do. As you say, I think we got a bit gallus, a bit blasé with the number of gems that we did manage to get, the high-profile ones, because everybody forgets all the utter rubbish that we actually brought in as well. And that model was not going to work. People point to Porto, they point to Ajax. Right, Ajax's model has changed. They still bring through youngsters, but they have big-name signings as well in there now. Apart from Calvin Bassey, seemingly that. I mean, seemingly the scout who scouted Calvin Bassey for Ajax has been found in a canal. But Porto as well, as you say, if Porto sell a guy to the English Premier League or a top Spanish club for £20 million, they buy another guy at 10 million. It's not, as you say, that's a great saying. They didn't reset to zero, and that is something that we seem to have done, and it's something that we didn't want Postecoglou to do either.
Ideally, what we want to be doing is what we did with Haksabanovic and Abelgur, although he's a bit of a mystery at the moment. I don't really know what's happening with him. But you take the boy that we are rumoured to have signed, Yuki Kobayashi. He's the one that's supposed to be coming in, the 22-year-old. And now apparently coming on a free. It was a $1.5 million, now apparently coming on a free. And what is that left in his wake? There's a whole load of guys that comment on Japanese football who are absolutely slating his club, absolutely slating them, you know, and other clubs as well for not getting the fees that they're supposed to get in Europe, and also letting a guy who's so potentially talented and such a potentially good player go for nothing. That's the kind of comments we want to leave in our wake. We don't want to be, you know, having people commenting us like that, but we want to be taking advantage of people who aren't running their clubs properly. So effectively, that's what we look to be doing. Now, again, I don't mean to imply that where we signed Haksabanovic and all from aren't running their clubs properly. That's a whole different political situation. But in terms of, like, in Japan, I mean, we stole Hatati. You know, Kyogo cost a bit more, but I mean, you know, we robbed some of those guys, and that's exactly what you want people saying about you. You want people looking at the club and going, "That's some very impressive business," you know. So, you know, we'll see how it sort of washes out in the end. But ultimately, I was very, as with most things Ange says, I was very enthused to hear him saying that. And you know, I thought it was a very interesting, and the fact that they've done January and they're into the World Cup, I think, they're into looking at the summer, I think it's fantastic, you know. So real sort of forward planning, real vision, you know, and again a real strategy, an agreed upon strategy, and everyone pulling in the same direction. So it's great to see, at least great to hear. We'll see how it pans out in terms of seeing it.
I mean,
you know.
You mentioned Abelgur there and Haksabanovic. I mentioned Haksabanovic earlier on. Now, Ange has been quite vocal. He's actually says that Haksabanovic has played more games than he expected at this point because of the lack of pre-season that he had. He says about Abelgur as well. He says he's not up to the speed that Ange Postecoglou would want a Celtic player to be at, and it will be after the break before we actually see him more integrated into the team. And you're talking about Yoki Kobayashi, who's meant to have been bought on a free transfer as a centre-half. Now, people would go say, well, that means we've got 5 centre-halves. It could be that you won't see much of Kobayashi this season because he's getting bedded into the club for potential exits in the summer. And that's the kind of forward planning that we're actually watching. We could be sitting here talking about Abelgard. I mean, you thought about Hatati maybe going, or O'Reilly maybe going. Maybe Abelgard's already in the building as a replacement to come in there. We don't know because only time will tell us.
The fact we have that boy in a free, Kev, we can't lose out of this, really. You're talking about his wages, but if he comes on a free, you take him in, you loan him out, you immediately loan him out to, you know, Hibs or whoever it is. You know, you give him some time to bed in, you give time for people to have a look at him. He's either going to have enough potential for us, or, you know, the manager will want to move him on. But either way, we're going to get paid for him. You know, so it's a no-brainer, and it's a win for us regardless. The one sort of wee fly in the ointment there in terms of things that the manager was talking about was James McCarthy. So that looks to be another bad hamstring injury, and his career has absolutely been littered with bad hamstring injuries. So it's unsurprising, very disappointing, and I mean, I don't think it's likely we'll see him again in any serious contention. But the problem is, it also means it's going to be difficult to sell him. And he's in a long-term contract, and it's going to be difficult to sell him. So that might be one sort of minor fly in the ointment. But, you know, otherwise we're going to have to keep paying for him for another couple of years. But look, it's one of those things, and you never know. Again, with players and decisions and people coming to the end of contract, that reminds me of poor old Tam Rogic. I know people have mentioned this, but those are some strange decisions he made. It reminds me of, remember your mother and father would have told you, when you were young, you never ever leave a job unless you've got another job lined up. He appears to have just left on a whim in a World Cup year. And that's the really baffling thing. In a World Cup year, he's like, I know he wanted a change of scenery, but, you have to have your eye on your ultimate goal. Did he not want to play in the World Cup? I mean, seriously, it's such a bizarre move.
It's very strange. You say if you want a change of scenery, Birmingham wouldn't be my move for a change of scenery. But, it's all went Pete Tong for him, really, hasn't it? I mean, he's not in the World Cup squad. Jason Cummins is in the World Cup squad. I meant to listen to the lads for Celtic Down Under this morning to see what the word in Australia is about that, because for this side of the world, it seems very bizarre that a guy who I last saw in a video when he was playing with Dundee on a table trying to set off a fire alarm on a Dundee night out and wrecking a house that he was on loan at as well, has ended up in the World Cup squad. Just seems utterly bizarre, but he might have turned himself around. Who knows? But Tam is one that he'll maybe have some regrets. I think he'll maybe leave football now. I think there's maybe a chance. I mean, he's only at West Brom until January, I think, anyway. So, wherever he's going to move to, I think you can actually see him ending up in Qatar or the A-League or something like that now, because his World Cup is now gone.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as you say, now that he doesn't have to play at a particular level, he'll just probably take the money and run. He'll take the biggest wage, whatever that happens to be. But I just, for the life of me, again, for most of us in life, these are decisions you really have to be careful and plan for. We can't just flit from job to job with no plans in between, and because there's no guarantee. So it just seems, to a normal guy, it just seems a very, very odd thing to have done in a World Cup year, and so important. I'm sure he wanted to play in the World Cup. He played in the qualifiers, man. And he was one of the better players all the way through, and I can't get my head around it. So anyway, look, it's a shame. But, he made the decisions, so it's difficult to feel super sorry for him, because, it's off the back of decisions he decided to make. So, but it is a shame, and it would have been great to see Tam in a World Cup. It
would have been. It would have been.
That would have been an interesting midfield, wouldn't it? Tam Rogic and Aaron Moy. That would have been an.
I know what you would have said. I know what you would have said about that midfield. I know you're not Aaron Moy's biggest fan, big man. I know that. Tony Cassidy comes in and tells us Jason Cummins rumoured to start at number 9 for Australia. I've just remembered Jason Cummins played for Rangers. I just remembered that there.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe that's something I tried to block out my mind.
Yeah.
But see, if we go back a couple of minutes, and you were talking about how we progress as a club, some decent comments came in. Wee Davy, I think Wee Davy's putting his avatar on Rightmove, bottom flat for rent, £450 a month. One good owner. The first thing an approach, Wee Davy says, the first thing an approach player is going to think, is this in the league that Rangers play in? No, but Liam, I'm not just bringing Liam up because he likes the Wu-Tang like me, but he actually does make a good point. He talks about Club Brugge, and he says this is a 4th year in the Champions League. After 2 years in the Champions League, they can keep their best players and still bring in top young players between 5 and 10 million. This is a 4th campaign, and they've qualified for the last 16. And
the models are there.
So there's, as he says, Club Brugge is a model. Have a look at their evolution of the transfer business. So there's a club for a middling league, probably higher quality in the Scottish League. I will actually say that. but they have got a business model. And it comes back to what Postecoglou says. If you want to improve in the Champions League, you've got to be consistently in it. And what Liam brings up there then becomes a reality and not just a hope. And being in the Champions League once in 5 years is not going to work.
Well, I mean, I've made this point before, and we've made this point before. But, if people just think about it, from the point of view of their own jobs and their own business, like I do things in my work that when you see someone new coming into the industry, and you just think, oh God, they've got no idea. I mean, I do it without even thinking. It's just part of the process, and you do it automatically. You become very, very good at it. You become an expert. That's what happens usually if you stick at something. But when you see new people coming in, or people without the same experience, actually you have to be reminded of the fact that you had to get used to doing that. It was something you had to learn. And when you see them coming in and sort of floundering, you're like, oh, geez, that's right. I've got to actually teach you how to do that. And I think most people can relate to that in their own jobs. You don't just suddenly rock up and be absolutely brilliant at something. It's very, well, you can be brilliant at but you don't just rock up and be absolutely fantastic at something. So it's interesting to see, how people are reacting to that. But look, our guys, they will learn. They'll learn or they'll move on. I think based on Ange's comments anyway, it's quite clear they're going to learn or they're going to move on fairly quickly.
It will be, and that's the way that we need to progress. I mean, I did say during the summer that somebody asked me what's the areas where you would improve your team. Something that we speak about on my daily bulletin every day during the summer as you're building up to a new season. And I say as well, everywhere's up for improvement. And I think the 6 games at the Champions League level has proved that every level, everywhere in the team is up for...
But we're not going to discuss it just now, Kev, because we've actual matches to discuss, which we're not going to have for the next 4 weeks. So that's a conversation. That's a conversation for another day. Tell me, what did you think of David Dickinson's bargain hunt of a decision to give the penalty against Bernabeu? You trying to construct a sentence with swear words in it?
I've deleted the comment which says, well, we need a VAR klaxon. So the VAR klaxon went off at 51 minutes and Mr. John Hughes Sr. actually brought up the varsical situation in Scottish football. I can see why it was given a penalty. I can see why, but the rule is an arse.
Yeah.
But I've seen plenty of games where if the arm's up there, it doesn't matter if the guy's looking at the ball or no. The referee has been given the penalty kick. What I will actually say is that's the first game I've ever been at with VAR, right? And I actually quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed the drama and the entertainment and the Americanization of the game. As we're sitting there waiting, going, I wonder what they actually saw, and it makes you start thinking as well. But it's a harsh decision, but I can see why it was given. I can see why it was given.
The decision aside, the comment I made in the introduction of VAR was that I could, if it went the same way as it went in the rugby, you'd very quickly end up with 60-minute halves of football. And that's exactly what happened. It was 61 minutes in that first half. And that's what's going to keep happening, because the more incidents there are, the longer, obviously they'll get faster at it, you would like to think, but maybe not, because they're garbage. But what happens is that the referee will abdicate responsibility wherever he can. And the rugby, it started out, it was only supposed to be for tries, and now it's for everything. You can go back to the first ball. So, the same thing could happen here, and it looks as if it is happening here, and they refuse to make a decision on the pitch, right? And the VAR's pulling them back for everything, and they're refereeing the games twice over, and all of a sudden, you've got a 60-minute half of football, right? Now, if you want to have a 60-minute half of football, the very least you can do is do what they do in the rugby, which is they sell
Stop
you
the
a wee, they sell you but that as well, but they sell you a wee microphone, a wee headset. You can listen to the ref. The ref's mic'd up. So the ref is mic'd up and you can hear the ref and the VAR having a consultation.
So you could actually hear the ref whistling the sash as he's running about the park.
Well, probably not over the tapping of his brogues, but you know that. I mean, if you want it to be entertainment, if you don't want people just standing for 15 minutes extra in a game, just looking at their shoes, waiting for VAR to make a decision, at least let them hear what's happening. Let them hear what they're talking about. You know, why would that be a problem? Why is transparency a problem? You know.
Want to know something? If you remember back to the last World Cup, and it's strange that there's a World Cup in 2 weeks. If you remember back to the last World Cup, what happened was exactly what you say there, John. The referees stopped giving decisions. It's like, well, I'm not giving a decision. The telly's going to give that decision, no me. And I think like Colin Watt says something brilliant on Monday. He says it's like giving a toddler the keys to a Ferrari, giving Scottish referees VAR, because they're not good enough to actually use it. And I think that's what we're seeing. But we're also seeing the actual handball's utterly ludicrous now and needs changed. The offside rule's utterly ludicrous and needs changed. And VAR has brought that more into focus for me rather than anything. I mean, I didn't believe that Bernabe should have been given a penalty, but I can see why it was given as a penalty kick, judging the other things that I've seen. And it's a handball rule for me, which is a problem, no VAR in that scenario.
Well, that's I mean, the next point I was going to make was what they've done is they've tried to remove all subjectivity from the decision. But then what that exposes is how ludicrous the rule is. Do you know what I mean? So you're exposing if you want to remove subjectivity, you have to have a cast iron rule, right? And it's not. So despite the fact they're trying to remove subjectivity, it is still subjective if you look at the wording of the rule. And I know what you're saying. You can see based on other decisions that you have seen, VAR-based decisions that you've seen, why it was given. I can't, for the life of me,
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's right.
Well, I mean, basically, it's not possible. It's not physically possible for a human being to jump without using other arms as leverage. It's not physically possible. So that is not an unnatural position. So straight away you take that out of it. As I said, unless we are going to sign nothing except armless men, Irish dancers or kangaroos, I don't see how you can assume that is an unnatural position. Try jumping without using your arms.
I know.
You know what I mean? Especially because he's not just jumping, right? He's trying to put leverage into a header. So he's got to twist his body, put leverage into a header and jump. You can't do that without using your arms. So, to me, it's an insane decision. And for me, that is, despite the fact they're trying to remove subjectivity, that is still subjective. And the rule did make it clear that should not be a handball for me, because he hasn't done anything to put himself in that position or to try and move into an unnatural position or to move his arms away from a body in an unnatural way. But again, the only difference between that, for instance, in O'Reilly's penalty that we got against us with the VAR in Madrid was the fact that O'Reilly was facing it. But Bernabe was facing the other way. So to me, that's just, it's madness. It's absolute madness. But look, as you say, it's like, who was it that was on one of the boys from Celtic Down Under was on the after match coverage, and he said it's like giving monkeys knives. A knife in and of itself is a very useful tool, but you give it to give it to some monkeys, and it's going to end up very badly for you.
That sounds like a Liam. That sounds like a Liamism, that one. Edward Y of Oz. If the refs were mic'd up, the conversation would be like, I didn't know. What do you think? I'm not sure either. It's up to you. There would be like two teenage lasses trying to order an Nando's. It would exactly be like that. The tagline today is Celtic won't stop until World Cup break. Why Ange's mantra is non-negotiable. we didn't want to stop to the World Cup break. I says at the start of this week, John, I want to get to 5 o'clock on Saturday night, still at least 7 points clear.
Yeah,
that for me. That is the bare minimum, and that's starting with going out and taking care of Motherwell tonight.
Yeah. I think we can actually be more points clear than that, depending on what's happening elsewhere. But I think potentially we can be more points clear. Can I just say, I thought going into Christmas it would still be tight, and then we'd pull away from them just for the strength of the squad. I don't think this is the same as us last year, because I don't think it was not last year, but the year before. But I don't think it's the same position that we were in. Where effectively we were behind, but we always looked as if we were going to come back. They don't look as if they're going to come back from this, not to me anyway. So, I'm quite, for me, the league is really all about just coaching our players to being at a higher level now, and what transfer business can be done. I expect tonight to be a comfortable victory. Motherwell haven't been playing that well. I'd like to see Starfelt, CCV, in the centre half position. I'd like to see Haxa, Kyogo and Jota up front, and I'll even concede Moy getting a game.
Oh, I want Moy to play just to annoy you. That's where I'm getting. I want Moy to play and score just to annoy you. That's my prediction. I didn't usually make predictions because prediction are for fools. But that's my prediction. Aaron Moy's going to play tonight, and he's going to score.
I will take that all day long, because right now he's in front of David Turnbull, and I think that, talking about aggressive transfer strategies, Turnbull needs to be worried about the fact there's a 31-year-old man in front of him. Again, that's a conversation maybe we can have the next time, because we're running a bit over now.
Definitely. I mean, there you go. I think Aaron Moy will play tonight. I think we'll leave that as the last word. John, just to leave you there fuming, that I think Aaron Moy is going to play. Liam Devine comes back and he says his favourite Wu-Tang member is the RZA. Aye, the RZA is absolutely fantastic, but his favourite MC is Ghostface Killer. Get that as well, but Method Man for me all day. Wee Jimmy comes in. O'Reilly would make a great Robin, Kev, no Batman. No, I think he's got that darkness that you need for Batman. And Ryan Kelly, Juranovic could play the Riddler. Good shout, Ryan. Good shout for that. A couple of wee shout out. Kevin Porter's saying, hope my dad's fine. I think he is fine. He was wandering about there as the programme was on. We must have been boring him, John, so he decided to go for a wee wander. And David Brown comes in, speedy recovery. He's fine, and he's through there sitting, listening. I'll need to go back and see him, make sure that he's all right. Everybody, Paul's going to be back for the post pre-game tonight, so make sure you join. There's nearly 500 of yous in just now. Please hit the like button. If we get over 400 likes, it does wonders for the channel. And look, thanks everybody. See yous later, and just remember, just dinna be bams to each other.
Hail, hail.